Chapter 12 of The Boy Scouts' First Campfire. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Boy Scouts' First Campfire by Herbert Carter. Chapter 12. Bumpus Makes a Find. "I say, Thad, come over here with me. I've got something to show you," remarked Allan, about half an hour after they had finished lunch, and while most of the boys were lying around taking it easy. The young acting scoutmaster quickly followed his chum, who led the way back of the tents and into the timber. Here they discovered Giraffe bending down, and so industriously engaged with some object he had in hand that he seemed to pay no attention to anything else. At first Thad thought the boy was sawing something, for there was a continuous movement to his right arm, and a sort of low buzzing sound. But then he knew that they had not brought a saw of any kind along with them, an axe and a hatchet being the only tools considered necessary in camp. Presently Giraffe halted to draw out a red bandana handkerchief with which to wipe his dripping forehead, while he stared hard at the object he had before him, and looked dubious enough. Thad saw now what it was, and he could hardly keep from laughing as the determined boy once more started sawing away as though his very life depended on his accomplishing the end he had in view. The object he had in his right hand was a queer sort of little bowl, made by fastening a stout cord to a piece of bent hickory. This cord was doubled around a stick that stood upright, its pointed lower end placed in a sort of hollow wooden dish, where a socket had been scooped out. The upper was also kept from burning the hand of the aspiring scout by another bit of wood. Of course Thad knew what Giraffe was trying to do. Deprived of matches for the balance of the day, and feeling a gnawing desire to see a fire sparkling, the scout had started in to try and make a blaze after the old-fashioned method used by some South Sea Islanders. But evidently the boy did not twirl the stick fast enough to produce sufficient heat to make the fine tender smoke, and then take fire. Giraffe's ambition was commendable, however, and so Thad said nothing, only crept away again, after touching Allan on the arm and beckoning. "What are you going to do about it?" asked the latter, when they had reached a safe position where their voices might not be heard by the object of their attention. "Why, nothing, I suppose," replied Thad, smiling. "Did you ever see such a fellow in all your life? He's a regular fire worshiper. I think he must have come down from the old Aztecs in Mexico. He's never happy without his little blaze." "But he might get fire after all?" protested Allan. "Between you and me, my boy, I don't think he will this time. Evidently he's never tried that game before, and no fellow ever succeeds at it the first time. It's harder than it seems. Let Giraffe work away. He'll have his fingers sore with the business before he gives up." "But what do you think makes him experiment that way right now, when he knows you're trying to put a curb on his weakness for building fires?" the other demanded. "Well, in the first place, I suppose he feels like starting something. And then again, Allan, it's a part of a boy's nature, you know, to always want to do that very thing he's been told he mustn't do. Now, Giraffe wants to show me that even keeping matches away from him won't prevent a really smart scout from making a fire, in case he feels like it. My praise of this morning must have spurred him on to let us see just what he can do. But if the bow and spindle way turns out bad, there's an easier chance for him if he only thinks of it," said the Maine boy. "What's that?" asked Thad, smiling calmly. "Why, all he's got to do is take out one of the lens out of the field glasses we have along with us, and as the sun is hot enough, he could set fire to some tinder in 3 shakes of a lamb's tail. Why, I've started fires that way dozens of times myself, when matches were scarce with us in the pine woods." Thereupon Thad quietly drew something from each pocket in his khaki trousers. "Well, I declare! You thought of that same thing, didn't you?" exclaimed the astonished Allan, "and took the trouble to remove both lens, so as to upset his calculations if he started to try the dodge. Giraffe has to be pretty cunning to get ahead of you, all right, Thad." "But I never imagined he'd be trying that saw method," admitted the scoutmaster. "There, he's given it up, and thrown his bow away. Next time he'll like as not make some improvement on that outfit. It must have been faulty, so he just couldn't get enough speed out of it. For the thing can be done, and I've seen it more than once, although I've never could make a fire that way myself." "Giraffe has one good quality," admitted Allan, "and that's persistence. Once he makes up his mind to do a thing, and he hates the worst kind to quit. Especially around grub time," chuckled the other. "Oh, that's a little weakness of his. Step-Hen says he must have hollow legs, or how else could he stow away all he does and never show it? But just look at how the sun shines on the trees over across the water, where that pretty little island lies in the middle of the lake. I never saw a nicer camping place, Thad." "And the same here," admitted the scoutmaster. "I've about made up my mind I'd like to investigate that island, even if we can't hope to get the whole outfit over. You're a good swimmer, Allan. What do you say to going across?" "Alone or with you?" asked the other quickly. "Oh, I wouldn't think of sending anyone alone," remarked the scoutmaster. "You know, some of the boys have already said the island has a terrible, mysterious look, as though it might be concealing some wonderful secret. The more they talk about it and speculate that way, the stronger grows my desire to explore it. Then let's call it a go. Think we can leave the rest of the patrol alone for an hour or two this afternoon?" asked Allan eagerly, as he too cast wistful looks across the shimmering water toward the strange little island that lay nestling there so modestly. "If they're put on their honor to behave, they'll be all right," replied Thad. "A scout must never dream of breaking his word once given. That's a part of his creed, you know, Allan, and even Bumpus understands that. By the way, where is Bumpus? I haven't noticed him around in camp for 10 minutes or more," remarked the second in command. "I suppose he's wandering around somewhere close by," replied Thad. "Bumpus certainly has got a big bump of curiosity, and is always poking into everything he can think of. I heard him asking you this very morning when you would find a bee tree for him, the way you used to do up in Maine. He's just bound to get honey if there's any to be found around this region." "Yes, and I said I would try it out while we were up here if the chance came. You see, perhaps there mightn't happen to be any wild bees around, for I haven't noticed them working." "Oh, make up your mind to that," declared Thad. "I've heard several farmers tell how they lost a fine swarm, no matter how much racket they kicked up with dishpans and all sorts of tin buckets. There are lots of bee trees in this region, I'd be willing to wager now, and if we could find one, it would be great. I like honey about as well as the next fellow, don't you forget it, Allan." There goes Giraffe into the tent, and from the sly way he looked around, I've got an idea he's suddenly remembered the lens in that field glass, and means to try one of them with the rays of the sun to make a little fire. Yes, Allan, I saw him, and just as you say, if his manner counts for anything, that's just what Giraffe has in hand. But won't he be the most surprised boy in 7 counties when he finds that the lens have been taken from the glass? There he comes out now. And say, don't he look sheepish, though?" Allan went on to remark. "I can see him peeping out of the corner of his eye at you, and just make up your mind Giraffe is saying to himself that it's a mean game to cheat a poor fellow out of a little expected pleasure that way." "On the other hand," remarked the scoutmaster, "I reckon he feels cheap to know that I'm onto his game, and have made ready to upset his calculations. But next time I'll put him on his honor not to try and make a fire in any way, shape, or style. Now, I don't fancy going away with Bumpus absent. He might get into trouble while we're off. Perhaps I'd better take his bugle, and give it a few notes to let him know he's wanted." "A fine idea, Thad," observed Allan. "I'll go and get it for you, as I happen to know just where Bumpus keeps it inside the tent here. He's just the opposite of Step-Hen, and never leaves his things scattered around." He had even climbed to his feet, for they were sitting at the time, when there broke out a sudden clamor that caused Allan to turn quickly and give his superior officer a meaning look. for the voice that made all that racket was only too well known to both boys, in that it belonged to the very scout about whom they'd been talking. Bumpus must be in some trouble again if they could judge from the noise he was making. Immediately visions of rattlesnakes and all manner of dangers connected with the forest trails flashed into the mind of Thad. What could the luckless fat boy have stumbled into now? That bump of curiosity, which he was pleased to term his investigating spirit, must have led him into some fresh difficulty. The boys were all on their feet by this time, and several had even snatched up the stout staves which had proven so useful during their arduous tramp from home to this far-off region of Lake Omega. "He's coming this way," called out Step-Hen excitedly. "Yes, sir, and on the full gallop, too, believe me," added Bob White, actually taking a step forward, as if ready to meet the danger halfway, should there any peril develop. Thad did not give the order to advance, because he had ere now discovered that there was no evidence of fright in the shouts of Bumpus. Rather could he detect a note of triumph, as though the fat boy believed he had accomplished something worth while, and was deserving of congratulation. And now all of them could make out what he was calling as he came stumbling along. "Hey, fellows, what do you think I found?" "Oh, that old vine nearly cut my neck in two, plague take it." "A boat." "Yes, a regular boat, hid away in the brush where I was looking for rabbit's tracks, meaning to learn how to follow the same. And better still, it's got a paddle in it, too. Now we can go fishing, and have a bully old time exploring that island out yonder. Don't you think I ought to get a merit badge, Thad, for being so smart, hey?" End of chapter 12.